Hey, it's Juliet back again today to talk about the recent Call Her Daddy interview with Sarah J. Maas. I felt like this was very topical and, I guess the theme I kind of wanted to explore today is around like hobbies and interests and like owning the things that actually like are uniquely weird that you like rather than kind of trying to shame yourself for them. It might be hobbies, it might be skills, it might be types of books, genres, etc. And I think that when I like saw the interview and I saw like a lot of the kind of stuff on like TikTok just talking about it and a few of the quotes, and I just thought that like it's so important to talk about like and celebrate the things that are weird and unique that we really enjoy and love, rather than like feeling like we have to like certain things. And yeah, it just felt like very topical and relevant, I guess, to a lot of the exploration that I'm doing in like going down the path, maybe that's less conventional, that is more intuitive and aligned with sort of your skills and natural strengths, as opposed to like trying to do the things that everyone else seems to be doing, or that we make these beliefs are expected of us. So I'll talk maybe first about the interview, and then second I kind of want to go into like hobbies and interests and go through kind of like some of the hobbies that I guess that I'm rediscovering or investing more of my time in at this stage, because I do feel like social media, like it's kind of funny, like I wouldn't have said that I'm addicted, but when I was writing down this list and really reflecting on like what are my hobbies and interests, like so much of that time that I used to probably do some of the hobbies, and like some of my hobbies are like literally like research, like Pinterest, or coming up with like style ideas, or looking for new bag items, things like that. But so much of that, I think like my default now is to like scroll TikTok, and it's like that is, I mean, maybe that is a hobby. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but I think it can like suck you in, and like it'd be really hard to like switch off it and to do the thing that was actually like kind of like it's on your to-do list of like, okay, this brings me joy. After I do a session like this, I'll feel heaps better. I kind of wanted to talk about that second. So first, on the Sarah J. Maas Call Her Daddy interview, I think there's something that she said around like how people sometimes, well, maybe often, especially in her early career, would like look down on her because she was writing fantasy, and even now known as like a romance fantasy author. She and if you don't know who Sarah J. Maas is, this is not the right video for you, but she is basically like, people say it's like smut, and it's not like an intellectual book, or it's just like got all these hated scenes in it that like is like like people look down on that. But I think what she said so eloquently, and I'm not going to do a good job of like rehashing it, so I recommend going and listening to the full episode, but we shouldn't shame, like what she was really trying to say is like we shouldn't be shaming people, and women especially, for having these interests, for enjoying a fantasy book. And like I think what her journey and like how she ended up coming to write some of this stuff is so interesting, because I too, as like a kid, was always so interested in fantasy, like anything that was in other world, like fairy tales. I used to believe there were fairies in my garden, and I used to like feed them and stuff. And like I feel like I just had such a wild imagination that like I really got, I found kind of sanctuary in it. Like I just thought, magic was real. Like I was like so convinced as well that I was gonna get like a muggle letter, like to go to Hogwarts. When I think it's like when you turn 11, I can't remember. Like I was so convinced that like Harry Potter, like, you know, wizards and witches were real. And I loved any kind of book, movie that explored that. And, you know, I think that carried through a little bit more into my mid, you know, what, like teenage years, I guess. Or definitely like, even I remember when Frozen came out, I was in college and I was like obsessed with it. I used to be my like feel good movie. If I was like a bit hungover or something, I would like, I think I got it on my laptop. Don't ask me how. And it was like a really poor quality, but I would watch it like, I don't know, like honestly so often because it made me feel, I don't know, it's hard to express like what like if you really enjoy fantasy and sort of, there's a lot of like the hero's journey, I think, as well in a lot of those kind of movies, and I really enjoy that kind of seeing a character arc like that, seeing them go through a hard time but then come out better and stronger than ever. And then it's almost like because it is in another world, or like these aren't real things or people or creatures, like that stands out more clearly in a way that makes you think more deeply, like in a different way to watching maybe like a drama, which, or maybe you could say an action adventure. I feel like action and adventure is gone like so action oriented these days, but a drama can sometimes be quite heavy and you like know what you're signing up for, and it's like a really tough journey, but you're not always gonna like resonate with the character, if that makes sense. But there's something that I find in like fantasy or sci-fi that's like, because they've removed like all the structures of what we take for granted or like what we just understand about how society works and things like that, you get to kind of, I don't know, like transport yourself there and like and feel a lot of the things that character's going through or gone through, and maybe see it in yourself or empathize, because you're trying to find like a relation or, you know, relate to this other world, and as like the human experience, like that is how you're doing it. And it, anyway, so that's sort of like what I find really, really interesting. And I definitely, yeah, through high school kind of like, obviously trying to think, like Hunger Games was probably really big, and like Twilight was huge, like absolutely loved those books when I was going through high school. And then it kind of, I really enjoyed like science and like space, learning about space and physics, and like to me it's sort of always that interest in like what else is going on like beyond our understanding of the world and the way we interact with it. So I think like she was kind of saying a similar thing in that like she would like was really obsessed with like cartoons when she was in middle school, and then like got like discovered fantasy I think in high school, and then like a few different, like loved Lord of the Rings. Like she sounded like she was like very, very obsessed with yeah, like I actually wasn't a Lord of the Ring girl. I don't know, maybe it's a generational thing, I'm not sure, but it felt more like a boys literature or like series. Then maybe at that age I was less into that, and like same with Star Wars, I wasn't as into that. Anyway, but each their own. So she then started writing it. She actually wrote her first series, The Throne of Glass, the first book for it, I think, when she was 16, which is pretty crazy. But she was saying it's sort of that this, she came from like a family that was like very like intellectual hobbies and passions, and so like I think her parents were both lawyers and like would read and still read the like New York Times front to back, like and that's their hobby. And I feel like, and then hers was no like more like, okay, like what were people wearing, or like other, you know, just like very different interests. And I think you know, it's something I've been thinking about a lot recently, about like for my partner loves reading the paper like front to back, and I love that I get my news in that way. But I just like have zero interest. Like I can read the headline, I want to know what's going on in the world, I want to have discussions about that, but I don't necessarily, well, no, like I just blatantly don't want to read the newspaper front to back. Which I don't know, maybe like, and I've always felt like really guilty for that, right? Like I felt like I should want to learn all this. And it's, you know, there's a balance between being aware of what's going on, but also like I need some joy, I need some like escape, I think, because, you know, especially when you're working a stressful job, you've got other things going on, like the last thing I want to do is like really analyze how like broken and messed up the world is. Like I want to kind of remove myself a little bit from it and just be like, I want to go to this other world where like this character's facing these like, you know, coming of age or, you know, real human challenges, like human experience challenges, and like see how they overcome that. And I find that like a real, I guess it is escapism, but it's also just joy. And I guess that has become a bit more of a hobby for me, because like another thing that she was saying was that she wasn't enjoying reading. Like she used to love reading, and then I think like in school, obviously like you learn a lot of great literature, and like it's important to read some of these, you know, the greatest novelists of all time and Shakespeare and all that. But you know, there's like reading for like learning, but there's also reading for just like pure joy and fun and escapism. And I think if that's something that you do like, and it means like you will end up reading for 2 hours at night rather than scrolling TikTok, like you'll probably feel better for it. And that's a good thing, as opposed to like downloading a book that's like really heavy and dense, and like especially when you're coming off the back of like a really tough work day, I find that really, really hard. Like I was trying to, like I really also enjoy reading biographies, but there's like a time and place, and like if I've had like a really grueling day or whatever and I get into bed and it's like 11 or later and I'm like, okay, I just need to wind down, that is not the book to help me wind down. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't want to like be stimulated too much, which is why that I find like if I am exhausted and then I just read like a couple of chapters of one of these like fantasy books, and I'm like, I'm drifting off to sleep, you know, it's great. Although sometimes I do find it kind of hard to stop reading them because I'm like, what's happening next? But I guess in some ways as well, it's, for me at least, like replaced what like crime, like kind of that like crime, is there another word for it that I'm thinking of? You know, like Gone Girl, like all that kind of stuff that like, that was a real big genre that I was into maybe in my like early to mid 20s, I guess, before I discovered this in my later 20s. But yeah, I feel like I got a bit bored of that. It was always a bit like, I'd want to read it so quickly just to find out kind of like who done it, and then like I just like, I think it had an expiry date, you know. And I feel like, yeah, anyway, so now I'm on my whole fantasy book exploration. Like I love like even learning about ones like about Greek gods, and like Circe was a really good one. There's a recent one that I've just read, The Blood of Hercules, and now I'm reading another earlier series from that author. But I love anything that kind of like seems to merge like some of that like mythology with like futurism or otherworldly things. And I guess my biggest thing, and what was so good about this interview and what the conversation that's opening up, is like you don't have to feel shame. Like you shouldn't feel shameful or shame at all for enjoying that, and for having hobbies or like wanting to read books that give you that escapism, that, you know, bring you joy. You know, not everything that we have to do has to be intellectual and like advancing ourselves. And I think, you know, obviously there's like a lot of people who don't have that issue of feeling that shame. Like if you are a more maybe creative person or you're in those type of fields, perhaps that's different. But I guess like just from my own experience, and a lot of this is just like, no one's actually like, I guess, shamed me. It's just like a thing that you feel, I guess, more shameful of. And I don't know where that comes from, obviously. It's just like, I guess, the world we grow up in. But, you know, it can be like offhand comments like, oh, you don't read the paper, like, you know, or like, oh, that's trash, you know, or like, I prefer to read this and that, you know. Like, there's nothing like superior about your taste in books. I think it's good to celebrate that we all have like very different passions and hobbies and interests, and like, you know, I've found, at least especially because I have been working quite like, you know, like the tech world has changed a lot. I reckon this is a big thing I have with it, but even in like consulting, in terms of like, you know, if you're not spending every minute of the day bettering yourself, like you're falling behind or you're not trying hard enough. Like that's the kind of stuff that's on my LinkedIn, which is why like LinkedIn has just become this like really toxic place for me, that I think once I eventually like don't have CEO or founder on my like a title, I think that would all change. Like the algorithm's just very targeted towards like founders for me. And there's just some like really horrible things out there that like, it's not like what I want to be reminded of. Like, of course, anytime I'm not working, and like, this has been a lot of things, but I would always feel guilty. Like when you're a founder, especially, you feel guilty. But like the reality is like to play the long game and to have endurance and to live like a balanced life, you need to have other, like, you need to have some time off. You need to go for a walk. You need to go to the gym, you know, you need to bake, like whatever it is that kind of allows you to like switch off your brain a bit so you can be more effective, you know, and not like have your whole, like your business consume your whole life. I think that is like, for me, the way that I want to work, and I think that's like, you know, the best way to play the long game in these kinds of things. But there is this like shame that I felt that it was, you know, I would go on LinkedIn when I was trying to have like, you know, a little break and being like, oh my God, like I should be reading this, like a book that's gonna like tell me about marketing or something. But I just think like, you know, if you're working like 12 plus hours a day, like I don't need to get back into bed and then like continue to work my brain. Like I was more effective when I started just like owning that, you know, that is a time that I need to escape, and that's a good thing, and it helps me sleep. And then with better sleep, I can wake up feeling refreshed. And if I want to learn something like in a new skill, there's ways I can pull that into my day, and like ChatGPT is very helpful for that. I don't necessarily need to buy and read a book cover to cover. So yeah, I feel like that was a really kind of like important point that she made that I hope, and I'm so glad it's been picked up on TikTok and like people are talking about that, because it is so popular. And like if something is that popular, it's almost like, okay, it is normal, like beyond normal, as in like more than the average person or like the average person does want to read this kind of stuff. And so let's all just acknowledge that, you know, we want to have hobbies that balance us in that way. And if you have a hobby that's not an intellectual hobby, that is nothing to be ashamed of. Anyway, that was my big takeaway from that. And then on to the second half. Sorry, I had this little like soda thing. I've been buying these from, I thought they were the poppy sodas, but it's actually Olipop from Safeway. And they are meant to be like, I don't know, supports digestive health. Like I think it's meant to be good for you in some way. But it just tastes like ginger beer, and I absolutely love it. And I get the illusion that it's making me feel better, but it does have bubbles in it, so I am like catching myself a little bit, so apologies for that. But anyway, now I feel like I just have to have a sip. Anyway, so that got me thinking about hobbies in this day and age, and like kind of what social media has like somewhat killed my hobbies, but I'm getting better at getting back into them. That's been a big focus of this year for me. So what did I want to cover here? So TikTok. Yes, I think I'm a little bit addicted to TikTok, and I do need to, like, I have one of the timer things on it where I, like, if I spend more than an hour, which is actually like a really long time, and I hit it every day, and I always ignore it. So I don't know if it's being that effective, but it is like telling me, yeah, more than 1 hour a day. And if you like, if I wake up at like 7 and go to bed at like 11, like that's like and I'm working, or I don't know, my days are all crazy at the moment, but you know what I mean. It's an hour's kind of like, that should be the limit. Like if I can get to that, I've hit it, or if I don't hit it, then I would feel happy. But the thing is, I find is like, sometimes I actually just really enjoy some of the learning elements on TikTok. Like it could be like, right, like we've got a puppy, so like sometimes like some dog trainers have been coming up and they're like, what to do if you can't get your dog to stop biting, which we can't do. And it's like, oh, that's really helpful. So I'm actually finding that, like, I find that quite good. Also just on like, you know, fashion and styling, like good finds on the real, things like that. I just love when people put that together. So I actually quite enjoy watching that. So I do feel like sometimes when I'm using TikTok, it is very useful. And then also just like thirdly, the like pure entertainment and funny videos, which like sometimes I enjoy, sometimes I like to do that. And you know, I think the hardest thing is sometimes when you're not aligning with what the algorithm is giving you. And so that's when I do find I end up spending more time, because it's like I'm looking for something, but I haven't quite worked out what it is that I feel like doing in that moment of time. But it's definitely, you know, kind of, that's time that like, okay, that's my downtime, and it takes that time away from things that I would have been doing, right? And so this is where I've been like really trying to bring back some of my more old school hobbies and interests. So like cooking and like baking is something that I used to love baking so much, and I'm trying to do a little bit more now. But even just like thinking about a nice meal to cook, that is something you could still do on your phone and be like, okay, I need to find a recipe. Or maybe it is just actually doing it in the kitchen. Like that's time that like would have been downtime that you're like using for another thing. So I feel like finding my love of baking and cooking is like come back for me a little bit on that. What was the other one that I was just thinking of? Oh, the other, yeah, like building a Pinterest board or scrolling Pinterest as opposed to scrolling TikTok. Because at least when I'm doing that, okay, I go to the platform and I'm like, okay, I want to look for like handbag inspiration. And then like, it's kind of like, okay, now I can do that kind of visual exploration and discovery piece, but it is very targeted, and like there is an end point on that when you're like, oh, okay, I think I've looked at enough for today. Or like maybe you want to switch it to like, right now I'm wanting to think about like how we're going to decorate like next home. So I've been like kind of creating a board on that. Whereas like if I was on TikTok, I might be there to be like, oh, I want to like get some fashion inspo, but I might go down a full rabbit hole of like dog training, or you know, like sometimes I get like a lot of astrology things about placements, because I do kind of engage with that stuff. So yeah, I find that like Pinterest helps me be a little bit more like targeted in what it is that I'm maybe looking for on TikTok, and it's just another way to get it right, but it helps me kind of time box the activity a little bit more. So that's another good one. I love walking. Walking is something that like is really like meditative for me. I think for me, like I do meditate. I actually haven't meditated in a while. Maybe I should do it soon because I'm feeling a bit stressed. But going for a walk is very meditative to me, whether I have it with music, without, with a podcast. Depends kind of the mood. Like now that I have my dog, I kind of go without anything, and I just kind of, because I'm kind of talking with him, like trying to encourage him to walk, and sometimes he doesn't like to walk on the lead. Yeah, like that to me is a very like relaxive, restorative hobby. Another one that I've definitely picked up on is like, I mean, I love obviously like skiing. That's like when I'm, you know, part of the reason why we're living in Tahoe. That's been a really good like active hobby. Obviously, like going out with friends, Pilates, going to the gym. So I feel like I've always had like a lot of like really like active hobbies, so to speak. But where I've like struggled or like not invested as much of my time into that I want to is in my like more chill indoor hobbies. And so that's where I think like TikTok kind of took over a lot of that part for me. Like it took over a lot of like what used to be my indoor hobbies, or like didn't allow space for them to emerge as much. So now that I'm doing more cooking, exploring Pinterest, I also have got like a sketchbook because I really enjoyed like sketching like fashion designs and models when I was a kid, and so that's like something that I brought back. I think like journaling, another really big one. Sometimes I just like want to pour something out of me. I don't have a very good like routine around it. It's kind of just like as things come up, then I will do it. But I would like to be a bit more regimented in it, because I think it's a really nice way to kind of like start your day or maybe end your day, because what I will find that like if I'm not making enough time for a lot of these types of activities, like when I hit my bed hits the pillow and I try to like, even after reading, sometimes there's just, it's like I'm processing everything you know, for that whole day, and going through it in night. But actually, like, to be honest, now that I'm doing the vlogging, I feel like I am doing that less because I'm able to talk through all these things that I've got ticking in my head that, you know, like don't necessarily, like that's what I used to do at night. Now I just have a way to get it out during the day, because I do find like sometimes my, like when I'm journaling, I can't write as fast as I'm thinking, and I like have this stuff that I just wants to come out of me and I can't seem to write as fast. Whereas when I'm talking, it just like kind of comes out and I don't have to like worry about that too much. It's why I can never read back any of my journals, which is probably bad, but, or maybe it's good because no one can read my journals, but they're just like crazy cursive writing. Oh my god, writing. Why did I say wedding? Clearly my head is elsewhere. Yeah, so that's what I think, like if you're like me and you kind of like have a bit of this like TikTok addiction, but you actually like, it's not like something you're like, oh, I have to cut down on. It's actually like, okay, like what are the things that I'm maybe getting from that I can try and get from different platforms with different ways of doing, that I can be able to do that activity and be like kind of proud of it, because then you have like an output. Like when you've made a Pinterest board, you have like an output from it. But like when you're scrolling on TikTok, like, I mean, you can sort of create your library of saved items and revisit it, but it doesn't feel as satisfying. And yes, that's what I found's kind of helped me. And then also just a way to kind of force this or like really kick it off has been for me on like a Sunday, I try to have like a, not necessarily like a tech-free day, but like a tech light day. So like any non-critical things like messages, emails, etc., I try, like I just don't respond to. I don't want to like use my brain to think about things that are not critical for that day. It's like trying to be a day of like just being and maybe doing some of those hobbies that I mentioned before, even if it is like watching a fantasy movie or reading a few chapters of my book. Like I just try really hard to like step away from the phone for that day, because I find that really hard to do any other day, but on a Sunday I really do, and it takes a lot of that pressure off, and I do find it kind of really, yeah, like it's really nice. And like eventually I'll get to a day where maybe I don't touch my phone at all on a Sunday, but you know, we'll see. I think it's doing enough as is by just having like an intentional tech light day. Yeah, so anyway, that was kind of all I had for today. So hopefully, if you haven't read Sarah J Maas and you've always been interested in it but felt maybe like that's like I can't read it, like hopefully it's inspired you to open your, you know, horizons a bit and to go for it and to seek out more joy in your hobbies and yeah, reduce some of that TikTok load. I'll see you next time.